The First Homecoming. After 5 years of sojourn in Europe, Rizal decided to return to the Philippines, despite disapproval from family members and friends. Nonetheless, before his first homecoming to the Philippines, he had a grand tour of Europe with Maximo Viola. Rizal and Viola to Dresden. Their tour of Europe began through their visit of Potsdam, a city near Berlin. Here, they saw the imposing mausoleum enclosing the statue of Frederick the Great. Rizal and Viola left Berlin at dawn of May 11, 1887 by train, bound for Dresden. It was in this city where Rizal visited Dr. Adolf B. Mayer, who was very happy seeing him. Rizal and Viola met Dr. Hagor. Rizal told Dr. Hagor that he planned to visit Lake Meritz, Czechoslovakia, to meet Blumentritt. Rizal and Viola arrived at Lake Meritz in the afternoon of May 13, 1887. They stepped down from the train that ferried them to Lake Meritz and were warmly received by Ferdinand Blumentritt. Rizal was overjoyed because he finally met the professor in person. Blumentritt was, likewise, pleased to see Rizal and embraced him. In the conversations that transpired between Blumentritt and Viola, Blumentritt described Rizal as the greatest product of the Philippines, whose coming into the world can be likened to a comet, whose rare brilliance appears only every other century. To Blumentritt, Rizal was not only the most outstanding man of the Filipino people, but the greatest man the Malayan race has ever produced. Rizal and Viola left Lake Meritz by train, bound for Prague, a historic city and the capital of Czechoslovakia. They took time to visit the tomb of Nicolaus Copernicus, a famous Polish astronomer. After a few days, Viola and Rizal went to Vienna via Brunn. To change the routine of their travel, the two decided to take a small boat that took them to the famous Danube River. The end of their Danube River voyage ended in Linz. They left Austria from Salzburg, the birthplace of Mozart, and re-entered Germany upon arrival at Munich. From Munich, they proceeded to Nuremberg, where they saw the horrible torture machines used during the Inquisition against the enemies of the Catholic Church. The two proceeded to Ulm. This city was known for having the largest and the tallest cathedral in Germany. From Ulm, Rizal and Viola moved to Stuttgart, Baden, and Rheinfall. It was at Rheinfall where they saw the Bin waterfall, the most beautiful waterfall in the continent of Europe. In Switzerland, Rizal and Viola crossed the Swiss border via Schaffhauser from Rheinfall. The two made brief stops at Basel, Bern, and Lausanne. From Lausanne, they took a small boat and landed at Geneva, the most beautiful and frequented city of Switzerland. Upon arriving at Geneva, Rizal received the news from his friends in Madrid. From the said news, Rizal learned that some of the Igorots died and that their G-strings and crude weapons had become objects of mockery and laughter by the Spanish press and the Spaniards. As an advocate of human dignity, Rizal was infuriated and resented the degradation of his fellow men from northern Luzon. After being together for 15 days in the city, the two parted ways on June 23, 1887. Rizal toured Italy while Viola returned to Barcelona. From Geneva, Rizal continued his travel to Italy. He visited the cities of Turin, Milan, Venice, Florence, and Rome. The city of Rome, the Eternal City, the site of the Vatican, the seat of authority of the Roman Catholic Church, and capital of the ancient Roman Empire, attracted him so much. In Rome, Rizal had the opportunity to see St. Peter's Dome by Michelangelo and Giacomo della Porta and St. Peter's Basilica. Rizal was impressed by the fine example of Renaissance architecture. After a week of travel in Rome, Rizal prepared for his homecoming, planned to return to the Philippines. Even before 1887, Rizal wanted to go back to the Philippines. In fact, as early as 1884, he expressed his desire to return to his homeland. This decision was due to the following reasons. 1. Financial difficulties at Calamba. 2. Dissatisfaction with his studies in Madrid. 3. Desire to prove that there was no reason to fear going home. And 4. His belief that the Spanish regime would not punish the innocent. This plan did not materialize. After 5 years of stay and travel in Europe, Rizal finally decided to go home. In 1887, motivated by the following reasons, Rizal decided to return to his homeland. First, to operate his mother's eyes. Second, to serve the people oppressed by the Spaniards. Third, to find out for himself the effects of his novel Noli to the Filipinos and the Spaniards. And fourth, to find out the cause of Leonor Rivera's silence. Despite the objection by Pasiano and Rizal's friends, Rizal finally decided, after securing the permission from his father, for his return to the country. After 5 years of being away from home, Rizal left Rome by train, headed for Marseille, France, on July 3, 1887. He stayed in Manila for 3 days. Later on, he visited Ateneo. At Ateneo, attempts were made by the Jesuits to win Rizal back to the fold of his old faith. Father Faura showed Rizal the image of the Sacred Heart of Jesus, which he carved during his student days. He told Rizal what was wrong with the Noli. Rizal simply responded by saying that what he wrote was the truth. Rizal arrived in Calamba on August 8, 1887. Upon his arrival at Calamba, rumors were spreading that Rizal was a German spy, an agent of Bismarck, a Mason, and a soul halfway to damnation. Moreover, Rizal was receiving threats every day. At any rate, Rizal kept himself busy during his entire stay in Calamba. He opened a medical clinic and started practicing his profession. He cured the sick and soon gained fame as an eye specialist and surgeon. He came to be called by the old folks of Calamba as Dr. Ulanan, as he was mistaken for a German. To discourage his townmates from indulging in sapong and panggingit, Rizal gave them lessons in gymnastics, fencing, and even shooting. After a few weeks in Calamba, Rizal received a letter from Governor General Terrero inviting him to go to Malacañang. This was the time when a battle over the Noli Me Tangere was raging on. After reading the novel, Governor Terrero did not find anything wrong with it. Being liberal-minded and sensing the threat on the security of Rizal, owing to the power of the friars, Terrero gave Rizal a bodyguard in the person of Don Jose Paviel de Andrade. Terrero even counseled Rizal to leave the country for his own good and for the good of his family. Despite the advice given by Governor Terrero, Rizal opted to stay in his hometown and make it the venue of his advocacy. The tenants of Calamba sought Rizal's assistance by making him their spokesperson. Rizal accepted the request and started investigating the conditions obtaining in the hacienda owned by the Dominicans in Calamba. Some of the findings Rizal submitted to the Governor General for appropriate action were as follows. Rizal's exposure of the deplorable flight of the tenants, attested by the complainants and hacienda officials, aroused the ire of the friars. The friars pressured Malacañang to have Rizal eliminated. When this fell on deaf ears, the friars demanded for his deportation. As a consequence, Rizal's security was at stake. Governor Terrero reiterated his advice to Rizal to leave the country for good. In the same way, his parents and relatives compelled him to leave the Philippines for his own good and to escape the wrath of the friars. Rizal was, thus, forced by the situation to leave his homeland after 6 months of stay at Calamba for 2 reasons. First, his presence at Calamba was endangering the safety and happiness of his family and friends. Finally, he could be able to fight better his detractors and serve his country's cause in a foreign land. A poem for Lipa. Before leaving Calamba, Rizal was requested by his friend from Lipa to compose a poem to commemorate the conversion of Lipa from a pueblo or town to a villa or city. The poem was entitled Himno al Trabajo, or Hymn to Labor. For our country in war, for our country in peace, the Filipino will be ready while he lives and when he dies. As soon as the east is tinted with light, forth to the fields to plow the loam. Since it is work that sustains the man, the motherland, family, and the home. Hard though the soil may prove to be, implacable the sun above. For motherland, our wives and babes, 'twill be easy with our love. Courageously set out to work, your home is safe with a faithful wife, implanting in our children love for wisdom, land, and virtuous lives. When nightfall brings us to our rest, may smiling fortune guard our door. But if cruel fate should harm her man, the wife would toil on as before. Hail, hail, give praise to work, the country's vigor and her wealth. For work lift up your brow serene. It is your blood, your life, your health. If any youth protests his love, his work shall prove if he be good. That man alone who strives and toils can find a way to feed his brood. Teach us then the hardest tasks, for down the trails we turn our feet, that when our country calls tomorrow, the purpose we may complete. And may our elders say, who see us, see how worthy of their service. No incense can exalt our dead ones like a brave sun